Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm RonMan. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Castlevania Legacy of Darkness for Nintendo 64. This game is often criticized for its poor graphics, bad controls, unpleasing music, and overall just being an underwhelming entry in the series. Today we're going to take a look at this game and see if it's really as bad as people say. Now, I admit, I actually really love this game, but as a reviewer, I'm going to try to take a look at this as objectively as I can. Castlevania Legacy of Darkness was released in November 1999. Earlier that same year, in January, Castlevania for Nintendo 64 was released. As it turns out, both of these titles are nearly the same game, so why did they release nearly the same game twice in one year? From what I can tell, the original, released in January, was considered unfinished. Perhaps to meet a deadline? Legacy of Darkness has almost everything the first game has, but overall it's more polished and has more content. Later on, we'll get into the differences between the versions, but for now, we're just going to talk about the game and some of its problems. I've heard people complain about the graphics. I admit they're not as good as Zelda or Banjo-Kazooie, but I still think these graphics are perfectly fine. I think this game looks like what Castlevania should have looked like on Nintendo 64. Camera angles are also a point of contention. Yeah, sometimes the camera's a problem, but by pressing R, the camera will swing back behind you. You can actually rotate the camera with the D-pad, and it's uncomfortable. The controls don't feel as tight as this game's contemporaries, but I still think they feel okay. It's not enough to turn me off. How about the enemy design? Yeah, I agree that skeletons on motorcycles was pretty stupid. But we do have a lot of neat monsters, like vampires, a Frankenstein monster with a chainsaw, ghosts, zombies, mudmen, lizardmen, the list goes on. Okay, so the music in this game isn't exactly memorable, and it's easy to look back at any games previous to this and compare soundtracks. Castlevania 4 has one of the best soundtracks in any game ever, so I can understand the disappointment with this. With that being said, this music isn't bad, it's just forgettable. Now, I think the big reason why a lot of people hate this game is because it's just not quite as good as other Castlevania games. In other words, people were disappointed. As a result, a lot of people just tossed this one to the side in favor of Symphony of the Night. Hey, fair enough. I get you. Symphony is a wicked game. But this game is still good. It has flaws, sure, but what game doesn't? The flaws in Castlevania were mostly present in the original version, and were mostly ironed out in Legacy of Darkness. But for now, let's get into the differences between these games. Starting off, you can use the expansion pack in Legacy of Darkness. You can choose between low res and high resolution. If you choose high res, it makes the game look nice and sharp. The only problem is that it hurts the game's frame rate. A lot. Like a lot. Like, it's unplayable. So, stick to low res. In the original, you only have two playable characters, Reinhardt and Carrie. In Legacy of Darkness, you have four. Reinhardt, Carrie, Cornell, and Henry. Although Henry's campaign is kinda like a minigame where you need to rescue children who are lost in different locations around the castle. And this mode offers in-game unlockables. In the original, you can power up your primary weapon once. In Legacy of Darkness, you can power it up twice, and your weapon will actually look different to better signify that it's powered up. This is similar to whip upgrades in previous games. In Legacy of Darkness, you can also power up your sub-weapon. This is done by picking up more of the same sub-weapon, which makes the weapon stronger and even behave differently. You can't do this in the original. The camera does seem to work better in Legacy of Darkness, but in both games, you press R to throw the camera behind you and to lock onto enemies. In the original, pressing R locks you into place. Like, it actually stops you from moving. I don't know why they did this. For whatever reason, the camera and the lock-on just work much better in Legacy. In the original, there's voice acting. In Legacy of Darkness, there's no voice acting. Not too sure why they did this, perhaps to save room on the cart. But I'm cool with that. There are some stage variations between the original and Legacy. Not really too sure why this happened either, And that's not really for the better, it's just different. Like, certain levels are just different in Legacy, and I think that's kind of cool. I think that adds a bit of replay value, so you can go back and play the original and be like, oh, this and that, blah, blah. So those are some of the differences I've noticed. I know there are more, but this isn't supposed to be a differences video. This is a review for Legacy of Darkness. I mentioned before that there are 4 playable characters. 3 of the characters have full-length campaigns, which are all a little different. That adds a lot of replay value. You first have to play as Cornell, and your journey begins on a boat en route to Dracula's castle. You'll travel through 14 stages, and they're all quite different. You'll explore a boat, a forest, a mansion, complete with a hedge maze, a clock tower, art gallery, lava tower, and just so many others. I'm not going to name them all, but just know that there's a lot to see in this game. I genuinely find these stages fun to explore. Villa is my favorite stage. I felt it was similar to a survival horror game, very reminiscent of Resident Evil, in my opinion, and I think that's cool. I think I just love how this place looks. It's so elegant and welcoming, yet sad and dreadful. There's lots to see between all playable characters. Exploring your environments is necessary. Like in other Castlevania titles, you'll attack torches, statues, enemies, whatever, to obtain items. You'll find healing items like food, sub-weapons, money, sun cards, moon cards, status restoring items, red jewels, and power-ups. The money you collect isn't just for points this time. You can spend it to purchase items from a demon named Renan, or Raynon. Not really too sure how to pronounce that. You do this by interacting with these contracts. Sometimes your progression will be blocked. Oftentimes you'll need to find a key or solve a puzzle. As this game progresses, it gets more difficult, as you can imagine. I feel this game does a pretty good job at slowly increasing difficulty while not being unfair, for the most part. For whatever reason, I struggled a lot in the Tower of Execution during my playthrough of this game, but even then it's not that big of a deal because when you die you just respawn at the last save point, and they're scattered everywhere. I'm just going to get into a few nitpicks of this game. Now this doesn't really change my opinion of it, but I am just going to mention a few things that I thought were kind of crappy. First things first, in other Castlevania games you collect hearts, and this allows you to use your sub-weapon. In Legacy of Darkness you collect jewels, and that's all fine and good. You find small and large jewels, and they're both red. Why? They should have gone the same route as Castlevania Bloodlines. Small jewels are red, and large ones are blue. When you're in the sub-menu and you're using items, you can't just press start to return to the game. You actually have to press B several times to backpedal out of the menu. And this leads to another nitpick. When you're in the art gallery, there's a bunch of doors with either a sun or moon on it, meaning you can only open them during the day or night, respectively. I think that's a neat idea on paper, but in reality it just didn't work out too well. You need to keep going into your item inventory to use different cards to change the time of day, and then press B a whole bunch just to get back to the game. It's a little tedious. So that's Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. It sure ain't perfect, but it is a good game. I would play either version, but I would recommend playing the Legacy of Darkness version just because it is more polished and there is more content. I give Castlevania Legacy of Darkness an 8 out of 10. And I stand behind that 8. This is a good game. A lot of people shit on it, but it's not as bad as people say, in my opinion, and I recommend that you try it out. Let me know whether or not you like this game and why. Guys, I just want to say happy Halloween, thank you so much for watching, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.